This is the 306th episode of CloudFocus Weekly for the first week of July 2019. This episode is titled GTD Summit. I'm your host, Jason Atwood. Joining me, co-host, the second most productive man on the planet, third, Justin Elstein. Justin, how are you doing today?
That's a lot. Third highest? That's very incredible.
I was going to say second. And then I was like,
no.
I was thinking, well, if we're going to...
Probably not even third.
No.
I mean, I probably fall outside like the top couple.
You did. you did skip a weekly review.
I skipped a weekly review. So true. I did.
Terrible.
I was on vacation and I did. And guess what? I probably wasn't alone. I was in a room full of people that were way into GTD. And I could tell that those people, once in a while, skip a weekly review.
Yeah.
Even the man himself said it.
Yeah. Well, I remember back from when I did the interview with him, that was one of the things that he was surprised with. He's like, in the weekly review, I'm like, I've never skipped a weekly review. I can do quick ones, and I think I've done now two on the plane. 2 plane ones in the last couple weeks. Anyway, so why don't we talk about what we're going to talk about? So,
about what we're going to talk about?
First of all, let's set the agendas for today.
Okay.
And for the next summer, which is that every summer, third summer in a row, I did give you credit for this, so I'll give you credit on air again.
This happens so rarely. I love it.
Oh, no, you being right is rare. Me giving you credit for something
in the glory of rightness.
This is not right. This is just you had an idea that was good. That's rare.
I had a clear mind, and I just came to this idea.
There you go. So a couple years ago, you approached me and said, hey, we've been doing podcasts for like 5 years, and, in the summer, it's taking time off, and I want to go away to the Berkshires, and what if we, did a series and, recorded them, and then that was our summer. So we decided to do that, and so this is our GTD Summer Series, third year in a row. We're doing it all about GTD, and I thought it made sense to start it since we just 2 weeks ago in June, the end of June, went to the GTD Summit, the second and maybe last.
Second and probably last.
GTD Summit, and we can talk about it. And so then we'll have 4 episodes over the summer, and this will be the first one. So this popped up. Well, funny enough, this does kind of full circle because back in September, talking about time frames now. No, back last summer, the GTD for Teens came out. And I wrote a blog, a review on the Arkus blog. So if you want to go read that, it's on the Arkus blog. And in that, one of the authors retweeted it, and then we started going back and forth on Twitter. And then he said, "Oh, I'd really like to chat." And I was like, "Oh yeah, let's chat." So then we started chatting, and then I heard another podcast on this internal. GTD has 2. They have an internal pay podcast, it's GTD Connect, and then they have their external podcast. And I heard it on the internal one, and it was about this person who had a business who does, has GTD in the business. I was listening to it. I was like, oh, it's fascinating. But I was like, wow, we kind of do that, but we do it different and maybe a little bit more in depth, more in our culture, more in the DNA of Arkus. So I was like, I need to get to somebody. I need to be on this podcast. So I just started emailing people, and I found someone at GTD. And then all of a sudden I'm emailing with David Allen, and then all of a sudden it turns into let's do an interview, and it happened to be during Dreamforce of last year, which was in September. We recorded it. It was 1 hour. It was awesome. Again, you can listen to the actual. If you look on my Twitter, I think it's pinned to the top. You can hear the external version, which is basically half of it. But anyway, at the end of it, we were talking, and he said, well, what do you want to know from me? Because he was interviewing me the whole time, so it was my chance to sort of ask him. And I said, well, what's new? What's coming up? What are you doing with GTD? What's coming? And he mentioned the GTD Summit. He says, oh, yeah, next year we're going to do a GTD Summit again. And having recorded that meant he couldn't release the podcast, which he then didn't release until February to the public world because the summit had no information around it, right? So they didn't have the website and all that. So I kind of learned about the summit last year in September. Obviously put a placeholder in my tool. You and I decided that it was fun to do and good to do. And then it just happened to coincide with this race that we wanted to run in Sweden. So we did this whole 10-day vacation / GTD Summit thing, and we ended up in Amsterdam, and then the GTD Summit ensued. So why don't you start us off and just talk about it, I guess. I will say I've already been tweeted at and asked about this a couple times. Like, when are you going to talk about the Summit? So I think we should go. Yeah, let's talk about the Summit.
Now that it's a couple weeks removed and we've had a chance to sit back and reflect on it a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I took away, first of all, it was not what I was expecting.
What were you expecting?
I was expecting a very, like, the book, like, by the book. Like, this, not by the book, but, like, not B-U-Y, but B-Y,
yes.
By the book. This is like a manual. This is how this works. Like, I was expecting a lot of, like, instruction almost, and people coming up there and talking about how, this is my practice for doing this, and this is why I do that, and so on and so forth, and more tactical and less strategic. And it was the polar opposite. It couldn't have been more thought-provoking. It could not have been more just about thought leadership. And I mean, the tagline for it was a world full of projects, not problems, and really digging deep into like your mind and your soul, and just thinking about things in a completely different way. And underneath, there was this sort of simmering of GTD, right? Everyone there kind of got why they were there, but nobody talked so much about GTD. It wasn't really like a drink the Kool-Aid of GTD. It was more like, you already do this, which enables you to do all of these things.
Yeah.
Which was where my mind expanded to. It wasn't do your weekly review and these are the tasks that you should. No, that's very tactical. That we'll talk about some of that stuff in our series here, but this was very much about, like, you do GTD so that you can get to this level of creativity, this level of ideation, this level of just thought process. And it was way beyond my wildest expectations. And I'm really glad that we went. It was such an awesome experience, especially just out of a comfort zone. We're in a foreign city, never been to Amsterdam myself. Didn't really get to experience it, like, ooh, you went to Amsterdam. Did you, do this, that, the other? No, not really. I was at a conference. But it was so much fun, and I learned a lot, and I'm happy to share my takeaways and any raw notes or what have you, through this podcast. We'll get into it a little bit.
So, I mean, for everybody's out there, again, I think, because obviously this is a Salesforce podcast and we talk about Salesforce a lot, it was not a Salesforce conference. Like, it was the unconference. I think the best way to describe it, although we've never been to a TED conference.
We keep talking about it as though.
But I talked to someone who had and been to a couple TED talks, and they said it's very much like this. It's not tactical. It's not, here's how to click the button to do the thing. It's big speakers, big ideas, like heady moments, and so the format was I'll just give the format because I think it's kind of creative and interesting. And what I would challenge, actually, a lot of these Salesforce sort of dream-ins, Salesforce will never do this themselves, but I would challenge some of these dream-ins to think about this type of format, because I thought it brought a whole different thing. So here's the format. So we got there on Wednesday night. We came from Stockholm, Sweden, and there was a roast of GTD. Now that we had purchased the
Uber Pass.
GTD plus.
Apparently,
pass.
We were entitled to a few things that, like the signed book. We were like, do we get that? We did. We should have. But we didn't.
We didn't get the signed book. So it was kind of like an extra thing. And there was, the first one was in a comedy club at night, the night before the conference. They did this roast of GTD. That was super cool. I got to meet David Allen's wife and a couple other people who I know from just the years of being around, around the material. And it was fun. They did a fun roast and, of GTD. Okay. Then the conference was sort of it was set up as 2 days, one track. So think of it, you don't pick what you're going to go to. You're doing the whole thing. And then what I thought was really just fascinating, it had the start, it had the coffee, and then it had breaks and it had lunch and all that. So all the stuff you would know, but all this, you had an MC sort of,
Yes.
the master of ceremonies who was really, really good. You're going to look up his name and you're going to say his name.
You're
Thank
embarrassing us right now.
No, I wasn't if you didn't say it, but now you've said it.
I'm going to gtdsummit.com so I could get in there and figure
So what
this
he
out.
would do is like kind of lead it through each session, and he would kind of weave each speaking part, and then each one was somewhere between, some were as small as 5 minutes,
Yes.
some were maybe 15, and they were different types of content. So we had people who were authors, we had interviews, we had panels, we had. So, and it kind of would go like
meditation break.
Yeah, so it was, and that was what I thought. The content itself of these little sessions, right? So then you have these kind of like little mixed session, maybe for 2 hours. You'd have a 10-minute, a 5-minute, a 15-minute, a 20-minute, and then you'd have a break. And then you do that, you
And they were
repeat
chunked. They were chunked into like
4
topic areas. I think there were 5 big broad stroke topic areas.
Yeah, so like doing GTD for teens. But the thing that made it fascinating, so all this, you're like, oh, that sounds like anything I've ever gone to. The thing that made it fascinating to me, anyway, was the content was very, very unique. So yes, they had authors of productivity type books or authors of books about how the brain works, but they also had, generals. They also had an astronaut. They also had a musician. They also had artists who did, time-lapse video of fungus. And they all had the tie-in, like the thread. They were someone pretty much who did GTD stuff, like had an alliance to it, or knew David Allen. That was sort of the thing. Is like they knew David Allen.
Yeah.
And then but it was so unique that the content wasn't just about the one thing. And then they had, I thought, sort of the best part, we both loved this, they had this local museum, not curator, but I don't even know what to call him, a local Amsterdamian historian.
Marco.
Let's call him a historian.
Marco Kazenaar.
There you go.
He basically just knew everything there is to know about Amsterdam and the Netherlands and brought that to the table, and he was like the break.
Yeah, so he would
But it wasn't a break, but he was the mind break.
Either after like a big long session, like at the end of a session, or right after you come back from break or something, he'd get up and he did a series, like 5 of these across the entire 2 days, called The 5 Heroes of Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And it was maybe 5 minutes each, fully videoed, whatever. Some of them had videos, some of them he just showed slides, some of them was artists, some were political people. Fascinating. So you felt like, even though you're in Amsterdam, that you're stuck in this conference, this beautiful theater, and that had this amazing screen and all the sorts of stuff that made it amazing. But that's what I thought was just stunning. So that's the piece I'm going to put forth into the Salesforce universe, is that maybe as part of as you think through your next conferences, as your next Dreamers, obviously not this round and the stuff that's coming up this summer, but next year and the year after, how can you incorporate other things that are not Salesforce?
Right, but layer on top of it. Like, these things all tied back to GTD in a way.
Or the location. He did not tie it back
he
to
didn't, because he even said, I don't know GTD.
But
I know David Allen.
I'm thinking of Midwest Dreamin', right?
Sure.
How about if there was parts of the Midwest Dreamin', either during the keynote or after the keynote or whatever, a historian got up and talked about the history of Chicago.
Or the Midwest.
Right. And tied that into the content of what you're doing. So you felt that you were not just getting this, Salesforce stuff, but you're getting other, like, have a musician. They had a musician who then took a Amsterdam bike and turned it into a thing and did this whole piece to it. Again, not what I was expecting at all. I knew it wasn't going to be like, here's how you do your weekly review. Step 1, get clear. I knew it wasn't going to do that. But I was not expecting to be as big, thought-provoking, and just really well done. I mean, I'm kind of bummed in a way, because
we were both blown away by it. We really were, and my expectations were low. I was sitting there the night before, or even that morning when we were like on our way from Stockholm to Amsterdam, thinking, oh, now it's GTD Summit time. Like, I just had a little vacation, and it just it made the vacation. Like, I would go back for that, more of that. Give me more of that. Give me an IV of this. Like, I am so clear right now. I'm like ready to rock. By the way, let's give Ben Hammersley his credit. He is the MC.
Yes.
He did a great job of moving the show along, entertaining us throughout. He is a futurist and the editor at large at Wired.
There you go.
So that's who basically just we saw in between every speaker, he would come out, give a quick 1 minute, get you back on track, make you laugh a little bit, and then move right into the next. I thought it kicked off great. I really, really dug the way that they chunked the days into just these sort of areas of focus, essentially, to get you thinking and, you know, about, like, parts of it were about high performing teams. Then there was other parts that were about creatives, like people who are creative, like the I forget his name, but the Ove Kenneth Nilsson. So, you know, making creativity your superpower.
Right.
And they talked about creativity being a self-defense mechanism and a skill and something you should really learn. Like, you can teach your brain to do these things. And it was quite incredible to just see him up there, like, again, playing around. And again, that comes right from the conference. Play around, try things, fail, who cares? That's how you get ahead. Just seeing him play with, like, pedals and a bicycle and creating loops and, like, just making sounds, and it was just incredible. I have a video of it. I can post the video to Twitter if people want. Tweet at me. I'll throw the video up there. And it was just super awesome. Yeah. There was some tech involved, right? The Shashir, the CEO of Coda, was there. He ran YouTube when it was a fledgling division at Google and talked about what GTD enthusiasts can learn from YouTube, and just let it off with, like, 10 years ago when I said YouTube's going to be what cable was to broadcast TV, people laughed at me. Now it's inevitable. It happened. And it's like, oh, wow, yeah, it's that 10-year thing. It always wins out.
The other thing that was, so, and just in terms of size, it was about 500 to 700 people at the conference. Another 300 or so, 200 to 300 streaming, which they kind of nodded to a couple times. But the other thing about it that I thought was, and you do get this in the Dreamin'. So Northeast streaming last year, Midwest streaming. I've been to, certainly like Punta Dreamin', which was, like 60 people. There was it was very intimate. And what was really nice is there was a lot of authors, a lot of famous in these worlds. Some of them are more than others, but they were all part of the conference. They didn't just come in, do their thing, and left. They did have two video interviews. There are obviously people who couldn't make it or couldn't, fly to Amsterdam for 2 days. But everybody else who was there, who was doing their stuff, and Katie Coleman, who's an astronaut who did 2 space trips, spent 6 months on the ISS. I mean, she was there. And my fun story of it was we went out to the speakers dinner. Again, we purchased this sort of plus pass, and so we got to go to the speakers dinner on the first night.
Second night. Right.
So, first night after the conference, right. And so I was out on the porch. I think you and I walked out there because it was hot. So we walked out on this outdoor area, and I ended up talking to some people. And I went and said, I was talking to these 2 women, and one was a part of the events thing. And you were sitting down, doing something else.
I was drinking a beer. I was tired.
You were tired.
And I got up eventually and went inside.
So I was sitting there talking to this woman, and we were talking about her wedding. Her son-in-law's stepson's wedding, and her son's getting into college. And we were just having all these sort of conversations. The thing about the badges is that the name of your name was fine. It was big and bold.
Yeah.
And it did tell you whether you're a speaker or whether you were there.
The colors were different.
The colors were different. Yeah. But where you were from was tiny.
Yeah. So
Arkus was this tiny little thing. Not that mattered, but it meant I couldn't see what her thing was.
Astronaut.
Pretty much. So we had this whole conversation. I was telling her that she was like, what should I serve at the breakfast after the wedding? And I'm like, well, it's brunch. You got to do mimosas. We're having this whole conversation. She's like, oh, mimosas. She whips out. She starts capturing, that'd be a good idea. And blah, blah, blah. We're having this whole conversation. And I have no idea who I'm talking to until the next day. And she's the last speaker, which is usually the big spot. And I'm sitting there going, I can't believe I was out there talking to her about mimosas and cars getting stuck in the mud and all this stuff, and her son going to American University, and we're just having this conveation, which was
the coolest part of the conference. Though
definitely the coolest part. It was the part that I think if I had known I even made a flat Earth joke, now look back, I'm like, I made a flat Earth joke
to the woman who's seen the
curvature of the Earth.
How many people have seen this
for 6 months?
Yeah,
up in
staring
space.
at it.
So that was awesome.
So let me go back for a minute. So just to lay this out a little bit more. So there were these. So day 1 there were 4 blocks, and day 2 there were 4 blocks. And I just want to give the titles of the blocks so that everybody understands like what this was about. Now, block 1 on day 1, fine. The art of getting things done. Great. Block 2, the habits of high performers. Block 3, after lunch, the strategic value of clear space. Block 4, a world of projects, not problems. And then on day 2, we started off with how great leaders manage teams. Then we went to designing collaborative workspace cultures. After lunch, supercharging your productivity with technology. We watched a guy build a company, an online presence for a company, a website, a brand, and a chatbot for support in 5 minutes?
Yeah. Live.
As a technologist who goes to Salesforce conferences, I've never seen anything like that as a demo.
No.
And it worked, by the way, because I was interacting with it.
Yes. He was collecting the data.
He put up a
chatbot.
A chatbot, and then he was able to interact with it, and he threw some analytics right on top of it on the
And so it's
spot.
like, oh, there's 24 people watching this right now.
And who's VPN'd in from San Francisco?
Right.
Like, he was like, oh, wow, he's really on it. And then block 4 was in charge of anything and everything. Just basically being ready. So that's what this roadmap, as they called it, was about. And again, it's like, sure, the art of getting things done, but beyond that, you can see that it was very much a thinky conference and not a doey conference. And like you said, I would implore, and I know Salesforce tried this at Dreamforce like 3 years ago, maybe started it, or 4 years ago, trying to do this track that was more like thinky.
Yeah.
But they would always do it like in a very Salesforcey way. And I don't know, it just never stuck. Maybe they went too big as opposed to trying to do like a little offshooty conference. But you're right. It should be like a Dreamin' style of thing where it's more intimate and you get a chance to hear from people who aren't talking about like the day in the life of the Salesforce admin who is, writing flows. Those are valuable. I understand that having an expert in flow standing there and walking you through how to build a flow is definitely important. But there are other aspects to work and life and the integration of the two that everyone could get something out of.
And I think that would make, again, I don't think Salesforce would do this for their big things, but for the Dreamins, I think this would be great. Again, you're not going to have the budget. You're not going to have, this was produced extremely well.
Man. Let's talk about the screen.
The screen was this massive screen. I think you did post it. Did you retweet it or something?
I think I retweeted so the screen was
like being
this
like an
IMAX huge screen that went across. It was called the Amsterdam Theater, in Amsterdam, obviously, and it went. I'm hand motioning, but it went across the entirety of the front stage.
Right. You had to look left or right
enormous.
to see the whole thing if you weren't way back.
And it was so big that they were able to put the presentations up either full screen if it was like a really widescreen, amazing like video, or they just had two, like one on one side, one on the other, huge versions of the deck that whoever it was presenting. And then the first time it happened, it was sort of amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Ben is standing up there and he's like, okay, it's time for your first like break, caffeine break or whatever. We're going to have food, etc. And wait, you're not going to just walk back into the lobby because we're doing things different here. Hold on a minute, my magic screen. And all of a sudden the screen just starts moving and it opens up in the middle. And behind it was just this beautiful break area full of food, beverage, tables, and it was meant for networking.
Yeah.
It was built for networking. It was like nowhere to sit, stand there, drink some coffee, orange juice, apple juice, whatever, have a snack, chat, and they gave us ample time, like 45-minute breaks, hour-long breaks. It wasn't like come back in 15. No. It was go meet each other, hang out, and rest. And like so take the break.
So you came down from this big, from the
theater.
In the theater, you came down the stairs towards the stage.
Yeah, you walked on the stage,
and then walked around the stage and out the back through the screen.
And it was just set up beautifully. And they had a little bookstore there with all the books from a lot of the people who were presenting, as well as other books that they would have read or say, you might want to read this book.
Yeah, blank plastic,
Just
which I have to read.
super cool. That part of it really added to it because there was a lot of talking about the need for breaks and the need to recharge and the need to, like, the thing I took out, take a walk. Like, go take a walk. You need to take the breaks.
We'll get to our big takeaways.
Oh, we'll get to our big, sorry. But it was super cool to be able to experience that, and the way that they had you come back was also really interesting. You and I both picked up on it. Like, you know, they announced, like, okay, like, start finding your seats again. And again, there were no assigned seats. So it was like you and I were doing the thought experiment of like, let's go sit somewhere else every time. Let's not necessarily go back to our same seats. And they would play like a really nice video. And again, they had a filmmaker there, Louis, and I'm forgetting his last name, but Louis something, who was there, Louis Schwartzberg, an award-winning cinematographer. They were just really soothing images of like a hummingbird in super slow-mo or a bat eating something in super slow-mo with some nice music behind it. And then all of a sudden the video would stop and the music would stop. And that was like the trigger. Oh, conference is back on. And everybody was very well done.
Everybody was already there. Everybody's already sitting, and you kind of had that 5 minutes of videos to come in,
relax,
sit down, and they would lower the lights. It was really good. The other thing they did, and again, I'm trying to bring this back to the world of people who are running conferences. Again, more than a few people at Arkus actually run these conferences, so hopefully you're listening. The one that I thought was really good, and I don't love this generally, but I thought they did such a great job with it. I have to give them credit and say that they really pushed, on the first day especially, they pushed the concept of this, of really talking and interacting with other people. And they had multiple times during the sessions that they would say, get up and talk to the person next to you and literally have like a 5-minute conversation. Ask what's most challenging to them. And then, so you got, because at the beginning of the conference, you got this, you kind of got over the hump of like saying hello to people.
Whatever the social anxieties you had, they removed them within the first 20 minutes of the conference. So you
felt very comfortable no matter where you were for the rest of the conference, just going, hi, I'm Jason. How are you? What are you doing here? And we sat, I think, on the first night or second night or during one point.
What's the opener? What do we say?
Yeah, like, what brings you to GTD?
What are we doing here? And then we realized, no, we belong here. This is cool. This is very inclusive of us.
So that was really good. And then the other thing that I thought was, I just had another thought that made the conference really good. Anyway, maybe it'll come back to me. It was like nothing I've ever done. I've been to a ton of conferences. They're mostly tech conferences.
Again. I just don't think they're going to. I mean, they talk about it as like this was it. I mean, they said it. I mean, on the website I saw it. He said it up on the stage. I mean, that's it. It's a one-time gathering of the most productive, effective, and inspirational people you might ever meet. That's it. That's the line. So it says it on the website.
What happened 10 years ago, so maybe...
apparently that one wasn't as good because it was more like tactical. It was more like, this is GTD. This is how you do it. I think we're past that. It's like if you're into GTD, you're here and you want to hear stories of people who've embraced this and taken it so much further.
So, for example, I commented at the speakers dinner after the first day. I said, today nobody said the words weekly review. Nobody said 2-minute rule.
Nope.
Things like capture did show up, but all the like functional, the stuff that we actually love about GTD, these like kind of rules and things that you can do that help you in your life, they just weren't a part of it. Nope. It was like everybody here is already doing that, and again there is courses. They had a course I think either before or after on GTD, so you could have gone for like a week and taken like a 3-day course.
Vital Smarts was there as a partner.
Right. All right, so why don't you give me some of your take, or give me one of your big takeaways, and give me your favorite speaker. Your pick of the week, your speaker.
Okay, that's great. I think the big thing for me was that breaks are important. Like I never really, I try to just pound through my day and just get everything I need done, and just I very rarely take a minute to just chill out. And I learned through the conference that you need to do that. You need to just take a break, take 15 minutes, take 20 minutes, take a half hour, take as long as you need, get everything off your head and take a break, whether it be a walk, a stare out the window, a lay down on the couch, meditation, do some yoga for 15 minutes, whatever's your thing. Go out in the garden, be outside was a big one. Like, just take that break, recharge the brain, and trust. And this is where that underlying layer is, right? You can take the breaks, and that's where the creativity comes in when you clear that space to create the breaks. And the only reason why the space is clear is because all the things are already written down.
Right. There's some voice you can come back to.
Something you can come back to, and it's there, and you trust it. And if you really trust it, you can let your brain wander off and do whatever it's going to do. And that's where amazing happens. So that's what I took away from the conference, was like getting the stuff out of the brain so that I'm so clear and so just ready for anything, that any idea that just sort of magically pops in my head, there's space for it to grow and incubate. And then, I told you, like, yesterday I went for a walk.
Or a week ago yesterday.
Well, it was yesterday. I went for a walk, and I came back home, and instead of turning on the television or staring at my phone, I took out a pad and a pen, and I never do that. And I just started writing, and it just came out of me. Like, I don't know where it came from. I wasn't writing like a book. I wasn't writing anything. I was just scribbling ideas and scribbling stuff that was just ping, pang, like just jumping around in my head. And it's like, wow, where'd that all come from? Oh, it's because I just did a 3.5 hour weekly review and like cleared my whole mind of everything. And I was just free to like walk and wander. Whoa, that worked. That was amazing.
It is. That was a big one. The Mark Ticklinger talked about, he said, the two elements you need to think about taking a break. And it is recharging your brain. And he had stats on your brain is, whatever it is. Right. The other one is 15 minutes of staring out the window increases your mental ability by 23%. Like there's a lot of stats and numbers behind. There's a lot of brain stuff. Again, there's so many books I could suggest out of here.
There's a lot of neurological stuff going on.
But he said to really recharge your brain, you need two things. You need to know new information. So I was actually having a conversation with a loved one the other day about, how Candy Crush is not recharging your brain.
Right.
That is actually a stimulus, and it's not letting you relax, so you're not getting relaxed.
New not recharging your brain. Twitter, not recharging your brain.
It's just so relaxing.
Music, still not even.
So podcasts, they're new information. You can't have new information, and your mind should be able to wander off. So the idea, again, everybody said this, like taking a walk. People, you just put, if you ever take anything away from this, take a break and go for a walk and go outside.
Take a walk.
Like if you can, bundle up wherever you are or whatever. Obviously, it's easier in the summer or whatever. Take a 5-10 minute break, go out. I mean, it's one thing. It's something I've practiced is when I'm doing very deep work and then I come out of the deep work, I will go do something because I work from home. I'll do something menial. That's just it's not brain, it just needs physical activity. So I'll actually go, this does help me in my relationship. I go empty the dishwasher because it's just time to or I'll go open packages and put away the Amazon stuff, or I'll just do something menial for 5 to 10 minutes just to let my brain kind of, and it's still going, it's still thinking about whatever I was just doing. And sometimes it's doing good work, but I'm like letting it recharge and not giving it more information. So that was really good. So yeah, taking a break. I think the big one that was a little bit of an aha moment, although I've heard this before, there's always the GTD is not about getting things done. It's about, not getting things done. It's about creating. But this one, everybody pushed towards these. GTD is very much about creating clear space. What is clear space? It's the ability to let your brain, which is not for holding ideas, but for having them, allowing it to have that clear space, and meaning that you can then have these kind of just like what you experienced, right? You probably had your best week review ever because you had all this stuff out. You spent the most amount of time. You probably did more of a week review than you've probably done for a long time. You got all this stuff out, and then by getting all this stuff out and into your system, you told me you created all these new projects and all this sort of stuff that's all been sitting in there. You got it out, and then your brain went, oh, good, I don't have to remember all that stuff. I can now just be creative. And it really was. And it started to think and had this clear space to do things. David Allen makes a nice analogy of this. He does it about cooking. He says, when you're about to cook a new recipe, you've never cooked this recipe in the world, you've never cooked it, like it's like a big thing, you're going to do it. What's the first thing you do in the kitchen? You clear the decks. You get everything out and you make sure you're all ready. Like you clear out the kitchen and you make sure it's like ready for you to cook. You don't walk into a dirty kitchen and be like, oh, I'm going to cook a recipe I've never cooked before. You always like start clean because you're like, okay, it's clear space because now I'm going to do something hard. Hard thinking, hard cooking. Taking a break was a big one. Going for a walk.
Yeah.
And then the thing that came up, and I know this is very buzzwordy now, and part of this, whatever. It's very buzzwordy, but I think there's ways to make it into not buzzwordy. Is just the happiness stuff, right?
Yeah.
That creating happiness and
is
being
key.
happiness, and really that is a driver of productivity, and that learning how to create your own happiness in whatever the ways you do will make you more productive, will make you better. And so really, I think the takeaway is to kind of pay attention to it, to pay attention to things that do make you happy. And again, I think we as a society, we're caught up with the, we love to be overloaded with information, and that's what, and all the studies are saying that's not making us more happy. More information, what is it? The 177 newspapers of information that we get, the 15,000 alerts we get on our phone, the Facebooks and all that is not making us happy. And so that was like the other underlying thing was all this social media stuff and all this sort of technology and all the Facebook, Twitter, all this stuff is just bad. Everybody talked about it as bad. It's bad for productivity. It's bad for your brain. It's bad for your ability to have deep work. It's bad for your happiness. It's bad for your sleep. Like there was nothing. Like if I was not on I'm only on one social network, but it's amazing how much it was just like, hey, this is bad stuff.
Yeah, there was a speaker. His last name was Crab. If you recall, Tony Crab, I think. It was like how not to get things done.
Yes.
And he made a point that there has never been a generation with less time alone with their brains.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. So what does that mean? Like like we're just so overstimulated by all this stuff coming at us. We just need to be prepared to not let that frustrate us and not let that get in the way of what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do. And some people are like, check your email no more than 4 times a day. You don't need to. Every time you get an alert, you lose a minute, and you lose 10 IQ points right then and there in that moment. You've been alerted, your attention just went off, and you've lost it. If I could just add to this and give some things, like habits came into play a lot during this conference and creating good habits. So I wrote down a list of 5 things that I wanted to create as a habit for myself.
Okay.
So taking breaks in the day, it's a big one. Been doing it. It's been working out for me so far. So good. That's nice. Going for walks alone, preferably on a body of water, if possible. I live near a river, so it's nice. I can just walk on the river. I want to be able to kayak to the middle of the lake in the Berkshires where my in-laws have a house alone and just sit there for a while, just in the middle of the lake, nowhere by myself. Breathing, so getting into yoga, meditation, and Peloton, honestly. The Peloton bike, when you get on there, some of the instructors focus on breathing a lot. It's amazing. I did a couple of classes since, and some of the things that they're saying, I'm like, whoa, like that is so similar to like what I was hearing at the GTD Summit. These trainers are like so attuned to it. And then again, more physical activity, running without headphones, running without music, running without a podcast, just be by myself, be alone, exercising by myself. And those are some of the habits that I'm going to create for myself, and hopefully they're going to work out in a positive way for me.
Yeah, it is a really big one was let your brain be by itself. That's when it does the best. That's when it has these great ideas. But then have a system behind it So if you have the greatest idea in the world, you could write it down and then continue and then let your brain go down. And then it comes up with buy cat food because you're running along whatever, capture it and then continue going. If I go out for walks and stuff, I always have something I can write things down because I'm wandering around because that's when I have a great idea. I don't want to have to then sit for the next 30 minutes of that walk thinking, keep the idea. Okay, don't forget the idea. It's like, just capture it and then move on. Anyway, great stuff. Great conference. There's so many good speakers. Again, they're all up on gtdsummit.com.
Yeah, check out that website. Maybe we'll throw it in the notes of this show.
Yeah, we can do that.
Can we do that?
I did get a chance to meet a couple people who I was excited.
Who'd you get to meet that you were excited
I mean,
to
the
meet?
one I got to meet, and I guess this will lead
Who'd
up
we
to,
share an Uber with?
to next week. Oh, on the
That
way
was
back.
fun, wasn't it?
So the authors of GTD for Teens, so Mike Williams and
Mike Williams
Wallace,
and Mark Wallace.
Mark Wallace and Mike Williams.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun to get to talk to them.
We bought them an Uber ride.
Yes.
Thanks.
And then the big one for me was someone who I've been in contact with and sort of been using their products for as long as I've really been using GTD. And this will segue right into our next podcast, which will be up in 2 weeks. But I met Kun Case, who's the CEO and founder of Omni Group, who's behind Omnifocus, which we'll talk about next week. And that was really super cool. It was fun just to meet him and just be like, oh, like this is someone who I've just heard from, listened to on podcasts, been using his product, interacted with via email and things. But but in terms of my GTD history, Omnifocus and GTD are very much aligned and been in my life for the same 15 years.
Favorite speaker?
I mean,
if you could only see one.
If I could only see one speaker ever again.
Sure. I know who I'd pick.
I mean, I thought Katie Coleman was just amazing, but that was only because I was just fascinated by her and had just met her and didn't know who she was when I met her. The person I could actually listen to forever.
Please don't say the same person. Go ahead.
Oh, and it's not David Allen. But its problem is my favorite two people who I've heard from a ton, but I wish we had more of, was Dan Pink and
Dan Pink was my guy.
And Charles Duhigg, author. They are two great authors. They were both on satellite feeds.
Yeah.
But listen to Dan Pink talk. Oof. He's just. What I like about his stuff, especially both of them, they're very big thinking, but they also drive it with statistics, studies, science, and then functional things to do.
Yeah.
They say do this. Here's a study that shows this. Now here's how you can do this. Do this, and this.
Duhigg talked about habits.
Yes.
As that's
the
his
power
book,
of habit.
The Power of Habit.
If you've not read that book,
so
everybody should read that book.
He was talking about like cueing and triggering and rewarding and rewards. It's like, right, of course. It's like, there's Daddy's Sunday chocolate. Why? Because he did his weekly review.
Yes, that was a great one. So let's do some reading books. If you want to have some books, if we're going to pick some books for you to read, again, if you haven't read The Power of Habit, that's a great one. If you haven't read Drive by Dan Pink, he has a new one out. But Theo Campanelli, Brain Chains. Read Brain Chains. It's tough. He really gets into it, but he really, really starts to show this stuff, again, the sort of the how to get your brain to get into the right space. Obviously, GTD for Teens, really good. Great if you're a beginner, if you just want to like kind of lightly get into it. There's a great YouTube video of Mark Wallace doing GTD for Teens, like it's a TED Talk. What else? Any other books that? We said The Power of Habit. So those ones, I think I've read all those. They are very, very good books and great way to start off and stuff to take away from.
Very cool.
All right, so that's it. So we will be back in the second part of the GTD Summer Series a couple weeks from now, and we will be discussing why Omnifocus. That's right. We're gonna go deep in. We're actually gonna talk about Omnifocus, and we're gonna get into it. We're not gonna play around and be like, oh, it's just a tool. We're going to really just dig into it. All right? That's it. Until then, it's Justin Jason saying, enjoy those cloudy days.